so happy to see you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So why don't you
How are
tell us?
you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm doing well. Why don't you tell us what we're congratulating you for?
I was recently appointed a municipal court judge in our hometown, Edison, New Jersey.
And why is that so exciting? Because you are the first.
I am the first South Asian female to be appointed in all of New Jersey.
That is huge. So how do
In a
you feel?
municipal court, I should say, not all judges.
But still, how does that feel?
It feels great. It feels long overdue, I should say. It's
Yep.
almost surprising that I'm the first one, but it's an honor. It truly is.
As you know, I generally interview either students or just adults that I feel are in a unique position to share out their experiences. I ask them the question about what you wish you would have learned in school that you either didn't get to learn about at all, or you only touched on a little bit and feel that it would have been of value to dive into more deeply. So how would you answer that question?
So I gave this a lot of thought.
Good.
I think ultimately, and kind of what almost drove me to even take on this role was the fact that I never really learned what it took to get to a certain career or career goal, any sort of profession, whether it be in the arts or finance or lawyers or doctors. I never really knew what the journey was and how to best prepare for that journey. So something that I feel like I want to take on now that I have this role is to basically educate people just like you are, to tell them what they could do to better position themselves to then get to those goals. I feel like school never really taught me that, whether it was law school, college, high school, middle school. We didn't learn, okay, if you have an interest in becoming a lawyer, you should probably start with joining these 3 extracurriculars, or, interning over the summer or getting a summer job, whatever it may be. We never got that guidance. It was almost like study for your exams, get good grades, take the SATs, just focus on the numbers, and eventually you'll get there.
What can they do to position themselves in a way that would be successful for them?
So I think, well, there's several different ways to look at it, right? There are kids who really don't know. They don't know what they want to do, and that's fair, right? They're way too young to know, like, I want to be a lawyer and this is the path that I'm going to commit to 100%. Then there are those kids like, hey, my dad's a lawyer, my mom's a lawyer, I'm going to be a lawyer. Fine. Right. You have your path paved for you. Good luck, best wishes. And then I feel like there are those kids who have those interests, but they may even have a goal. Like, I want to be a lawyer, but I also may want to be a public defender or, go into public service. And it's those 2 groups, the first and the last, that I feel like schools should focus on, and I intend to focus on with my kids, is giving them kind of a broader, kind of like here are the things I did, and here are the things my peers did, and my path may interest you, or my peers might, and I would like for their examples to not be the same, right? Like I did, every internship under the sun at every law firm just to make sure I wanted to do it. Whereas, colleagues of mine were finance majors, they were, pre-med people, they were actors and decided to, go to law school. So there are those paths as well. And I just want them to be aware of every path that they can take
Exposure.
to end up in certain profession.
So just basically exposing and giving them more exposure.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
at what point do you feel like in your career or perhaps education, if at any point did you feel like, okay, this is what I should have had earlier, or this is what I should have known before?
I think it might have been just now. When I talk to kids now who are in high
Mhm.
school, and they don't necessarily now want to go to a 4-year college because maybe they
Mm,
already know what they want to do, and technical school should be able to,
mhm,
get them to that
mhm.
goal. And then I talk to other kids who don't know what they want to do and don't want to invest in a 4-year college because, hey, it may not be worth all
Yep.
that money. I think now is when I realize I didn't know, and they still don't know what the path is, right?
Yes.
Like they may know, okay, I would love to work at Google, but how do I get my foot in the door? People
Yes.
talk about, you have to start talking to people, right? Like networking
Networking.
is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
And when people say the word networking, it's like, okay, what does that mean?
With
Right?
networking too, I feel like I'm coming from a 5th grade teacher lens,
Right.
right? There seems to be like a connotation with networking of using others.
Right.
And I feel like how do you teach children that without it becoming using others? Because it's a fine line, right? It's
Right.
networking, but hopefully the goal is in a genuine way, as
Absolutely.
opposed to, well, I see so and so works for Google, so let me go be their friend.
Right.
So how do you teach that or show that, do you think?
I always tell people that I hate networking, which is like a lawyer's main trait to
Course.
be had is know how to network. It's more about listening than
Mm,
talking. It's
mm,
more about trying to understand what the other person's been through and what their path was and what their journey was to then
mm,
like understand what your options can be, and then
mm,
maybe use them as a resource, not
mm,
use them as your means.
mhm,
To me, I think that's what I've learned that networking is. And that's what I try to do. I just try to listen to everything everybody's saying, and take what I need from that instead of being like, hey, I see you work for Google. Want to get me a job? Or
yeah,
how do I get in the door?
yeah,
What can I do for you? It's more of understanding what their journey was. But again, like it's access to those people. How do
mm,
kids gain that access? Another thing that I want to focus now is to give kids that access, right? Is to like
mm,
bring panels of different careers to schools and tell them, hey, these people can be a resource to you. Listen to them.
yeah,
Try to understand, learn. Do you even want to work for Google? Why don't you listen to a day in the life of a Google employee and tell me if that's something that does in fact interest you? Yeah, so I'm starting off, hopefully with conversations just like
yes.
this about like how, for example, you became a teacher and what your path
Mm,
was. Like, I know so many kids who right now would love to educate, right? And they don't know. Okay, well, I'm still in high school. What do I need to do to
mm,
become a teacher? I'm at point A. I need to get to point B, but there's a whole entire journey in between
in
to
between,
become a successful teacher.
yeah,
Um, so it's really that I think kids absolutely need to be exposed to, because again, the reality of being a teacher and the process to get there is probably much different than what they have playing on
right,
in their head, right? Like you get to walk
yeah,
right on the chalkboard and
that's it. That's why
stop.
I became a teacher, and then I learned we don't even have chalkboards anymore.
I know.
So what do you think your number 1 tip is for networking? It's never too early to start practicing, I don't think. So how do
No,
you suggest using even their own cohort, their own friends or families as a network?
being able to have conversations with adults who I guess would be us in this scenario
Yes.
about how they got to where they are. It's not, it doesn't have to be this, lengthy, tell me everything and what school you went to and what majors you did, but just start the conversation.
Mm,
Ask people, what do you do? What are you? What does a day in the life of you look like? And figure out if there is something inside you that kind of like perks up when you hear these things, right? Like if I tell you a day in the life of a lawyer, you might not be so excited. But if I tell you a day in the life of a teacher, I'm sure just the the gratification you get out of that job, and talking to kids and all that stuff like that.
Yeah.
If that seems to perk you up, then that, explore
That's
it,
the
explore it
direction.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you choose law?
I did not want to be a lawyer when I was in high school. Like that was not my path. Like you knew me in high school.
Yes.
I was like, I had a flair for drama, and I like my thing was like, I want to be an actor or a singer or something much bigger than myself.
Theatrical.
Yes. And honestly, like even if I did want to pursue that, I would have not known the first thing to do, right? Like I
Okay.
wouldn't have known like what acting school it was. I didn't know what, like that I could take like professional music, like singing classes. Like I feel like now it's our generation who's almost pushing our kids to do that now because maybe we missed out on it ourselves.
Yes.
But my dad was actually like, you know what? Sheena's going into the business, my eldest sister. My middle sister was becoming a nurse. And he's like, we need a lawyer in the family. So why don't you go intern at this law office? And I was like, oh, okay, well, I have no idea what I want to do. So each subsequent internship over the summers, all were at lawyers' offices. And then like I just started gaining the experience. And then the thing is, when you spend so much time in something, it's only inevitable that you're going to get good at it, right? So I did become good at it, and it wasn't until I got to the Attorney General's office where I was like, you know what, this might be my passion. This might be
What was it
something.
about? What was it about that particular stage, do you think?
I think I did become comfortable. I found that I was good in the courtroom. I was able to kind of touch on that flair of drama because, in a courtroom and trials, you get to, make those big presentations. But then it's also the public service part that I really truly felt that being a lawyer didn't, it didn't take any part of my soul away, which up until then, I feel like I didn't truly love it because there was something missing. And I think that the public service part of the AG's office finally like brought it all together for me.
Okay.
But I can't say that I'm like over the whole wanting to be an actress and singer.
Listen, you're on screen right now. The floor is yours. You can sing your heart out for us. We would love
break out and dance.
There are certain traits that people associate with lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
How would you counter those, or how would you kind of disprove those? Because now that you have the ins and outs of the field, would you say that you guys get a bad rep for no reason? Do you feel like there's truth to it? Is it a little bit of everything?
I think that in every profession, you'll get people who are doing it for the money and people who are doing it for the people, like their client. I think it's very each lawyer dependent. I think there are a lot that are out there to just make the money and move on, but then there are a lot out there who are like willing to work hard, and actually help people.
When you morally or internally are conflicted with the decision you have to make or argue on behalf of someone else, how do you handle that?
We are at the beck and call of our clients. I have come across several clients who I've had to make the difficult decision to follow, what they want to do. I feel like lawyers are rarely in a position to be able to say no, whether it's because they're in kind of like a binding situation, like for example, when you work for the state, you can't like let go of your client. It's the state.
Right.
Or whether it be financial, you need the money, so you can't really, let go of your clients. Honestly, I think they're really hard decisions. And based on those two things, I am bound to this client this isn't the only case that I have with them. It's almost like a give and take, but at the AG's office, I did
Okay.
actually quite often feel like I was put in
Mm,
a situation where I wasn't going to be able to put my best foot forward, which is something that I truly live by.
of course.
Um, and again, it's really just the reality of the profession, right? It's just you have a client and you can't really say no or yes. You can advise to the and beg them to the best of your ability, but at the end of the day, they have their own interests.
For how will your responsibilities be different now as a judge, as opposed to just being an attorney?
You're finally able to look at both sides, right? It's
Mm,
finally like you're not bound to one particular side, right?
mhm.
In in any legal case, right, each side has a valid argument, right?
Mm,
Otherwise, they wouldn't be in front of a judge.
right.
Um, if somebody was arguing the law says the sky is blue, and this guy's coming here and saying the sky is blue, and the other guy's saying no, the sky's yellow. Well, you really, there's really no argument here. But those cases aren't going to end up in front of a judge. I think that in this position, one, I'll finally stop having these extremely hostile conversations with opposing counsel. I think I'll finally be in a position to say, okay, now I get to actually take in both sides
Mm,
without arguing the nitty gritties of like just one side. I love that. I love that I'll just be able to like actually know everything that happened, make these credibility determinations instead of fighting to like make my witness credible.
yeah.
So I love that. I love that it's just going to be a truly whole picture.
Just for our students who may not know, like, how do you get to be a judge? I think some students might be assuming that you can just like apply and be a judge.
So to be a judge, you do have to be appointed. And when it gets into towns, you have to be appointed by the mayor of that town. And when you're going to Superior Court, which is based on county, that's when the governor appoints.
And how do you suggest for kids and adults how to deal with those you disagree with, or how to communicate effectively? Because I think being an attorney is so much about considering the other side and countering. And though your objective might be a little bit different in that it might be to win a case, in terms of building relationships, or, as you grow older, to be able to, because I think so much of our society today is the lack of being able to just communicate effectively and openly. So how would you share that forward?
Growing up, I wasn't confrontational. I still am not confrontational, which for a lawyer is a big thing to say. I am not the type of person that's going to go at it and like get
Right.
into a big argument with someone. I've always been a kill 'em with kindness type of person. And honestly, it's worked, right? I never believe in breaking relationships. I don't believe in burning bridges. Listen, there's going to be a million people that disagree with every move you make. And now that there's social media out there, they're going to get to tell you about it too,
Well,
right?
yeah.
I know. But I think ultimately, being
Mhm.
confident in what you're saying is so incredibly important. And by confident, I mean knowing what you're saying, right? It's
Mm,
not just blurting stuff out and being like, I'm right. It's knowing, having the knowledge to then speak to somebody
mm,
in a confident manner without making them feel like they're inferior or they don't know what they're talking about. And, these are conversations that I have with my kids, and they're 4 and 7. I
mhm,
think just the ability to talk and
mm.
and know what you're talking about, but then be able to say it in a kind way
You don't have to
is
be
so
cruel.
important.
Mm,
Never once have I, you know, been in this heated, aggressive conversation with them because it's not necessary. You're never going to
yep.
get anything established by that. I think the last administration showed us that you're not going to get very far with
Yeah.
these like
Bullying.
aggressive, exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
like those tactics. So I'm 100% all about just being kind and knowing what you're talking about. And, if at the end of the day they still disagree, that's okay. People are
So
going to disagree. It's
right.
the way of life.
Yeah. And I feel like there's this narrative of what strength looks like. And
Hmm.
oftentimes strength is associated with, you know, the lawyers that are, or I'm just using lawyers as an example because I'm speaking to you, but that are loud and that are kind of in your face and very passionate. And do you feel like that's true strength?
I
Like, do you,
truly do not. I actually find that as the generation changes in my profession, you still have that old school mentality where like you need to be big and loud and just take over
fiery?
the room. Right. But I've actually learned that judges don't respond to that well at all. They actually they actually look down on the person that's commanding their attention, right? It's
Mm,
just, I think it's almost like people are sick of that now. They don't want their attention to be commanded, right? If
yeah.
they're interested in what you're saying, they will naturally pay attention. So
Mm,
I feel like, again, when I do speak, when I do stand up and speak, there is nothing about me that is commanding or big. I'm 5'2". I assure you, I am not big in the courtroom. Like I don't purposely wear heels or anything like that. It's just
mm,
if I know what I'm saying and I say it well,
mm.
I naturally command attention.
I think that's important. I think a lot of times our young ones, the way that they describe a strong woman is so often someone who's very loud and in your face and kind of like rebellious. And I'm not saying that's not strength in its own right, but
Mhm.
it was just curious to me because I've always felt, I think, similar to you, that strength is quiet.
Right.
And I actually think it's quite the opposite, similar to what you're saying. So I was just curious if in a courtroom where you're meant to argue,
Right.
if you still felt that that was true.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely not. I mean, especially in a courtroom, I I think also for women, it's also
Mhm.
changing in that, there is this acknowledgement of the gender inequality. So there is this conscious effort to allow women to speak now. So
Mm,
even if I did, you know, get interrupted by a male, it's not like I'm commanding your attention. It's like, wait a minute, let me finish. And that's
yeah.
appreciated rather than, stomping my feet and, waving my hands like I'm still here. Like I think it's very different now, honestly. It's just I think there's much more of an appreciation for just somebody who's knowledgeable and
Yes. Yeah.
eloquent, as opposed to somebody who's just, causing a tantrum.
Attention seeking, exactly.
Exactly.
So now, as being the first South Asian judge, municipal judge, I will never get tired of saying that. I'm so, so proud of you. Also, if you could get me a gavel, that would be great. I'm just
Done.
gonna say, Your Honor, I love it. I love it so much. Um, do
So
you
for the first
feel
time, somebody like other than somebody I knew called me judge, and I looked behind and I'm like, who is she talking to? No, no,
you, Your Honor?
you.
I love it. As the first South Asian municipal judge, I teach a lot of South Asian students. So I do feel like this is an especially important conversation for them to see. Why do you think
Um,
it's so important for them to see you and you in particular?
I think it's important for them to see that just because I am a person who will talk to them kindly and, you know, um, not get into these like confrontational things. I think it's important for them to see that I'm still a professional. I'm
Mm,
still an adult. I do still deserve that respect.
yeah,
So hopefully I've accomplished that.
absolutely. I have no doubt. And I think it's also important that they just see themselves in someone because to be a judge at any level is huge. I mean, I think that no matter what angle you take in life, what road you take, you're going to eventually come up to a law that you're
Mhm.
going to either have to kind of
Absolutely.
consider, or you're going to have to think about, well, why is it there? Or it's getting in your way, or it's helping you, or whatever it may be. So I think it's important for them to see that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Honestly, the fact that they have to go through a school system, right? That's like
yeah,
something that they have to deal with every
yeah,
single day. The fact that they have to wake up at a certain hour, those are laws and rules and, regulations made up by somebody else, not them.
yeah,
So, and that's the other thing, right? Like kids need to understand that yes, I do live by these rules and I do live by these laws, but people out there, there is an ability to challenge things, right? Like
yes,
you may not win. Like if you're going to try to challenge the school schedule, by all means, go for it. But you know your strengths and weaknesses of a case.
yeah,
But the fact is that you can challenge things, and you need to learn what it takes to do that, right? You
yeah,
need to learn, okay, well, I need to learn how to talk. I need to
yeah,
learn what it means to have two sides of an argument. I need to learn, okay, well, if I'm going to challenge something, I should probably know what the rules and regulations and, things are that are
yeah,
governing these things that I want to challenge. Um, those things, they're just so incredibly important for
yeah,
kids to know, right?
yeah,
Like it's important to know that you can change things that you don't believe in, even if
yeah.
it's just for yourself.
We have to the adults have to unlearn it first, because
Mhm.
I don't think we've always given permission to kids to challenge it, because obviously it makes our lives a little more difficult, right?
Right.
But to make them aware that this is the law, but it doesn't have to be. It's
Right.
almost like follow the law, but you could also change it.
Yes. Yes.
So,
I'm not changing your bedtime, but
but you
one
could
day we'll talk about
probably give me a hard time about it if you wanted to. It's so interesting because I look back at our own education and I'm like, wow, it was really just so limited.
it.
But we
Right.
wouldn't know to challenge it. We wouldn't know. And we were brought up in multicultural homes, and we knew there was other, perspectives, but we wouldn't even think that we can challenge what's being said to us.
Right.
And I think that in and of itself is a huge, huge lesson. So, are there issues that you're passionate about in particular, especially as a lawyer and as you've gone through the system and the things that you've seen and the laws that you've had to defend? Are there things that stand out? Because you have like an inside look, right? I can only look
Mhm.
from the outside. Do you feel, is there a particular issue or issue that you're passionate about?
Honestly, at the AG's office, I did gain an appreciation for what it takes to be a state employee.
Mm.
Um, especially at places like psych hospitals and
Oh
mental
yeah.
hospitals and you know state-run facilities.
Mm.
But it was also very shocking how much job protection people really do have at these
Mm.
sorts of facilities. So you could, and this is a mere example, not touching
Yeah.
on any
Mm.
specific case I had, but you could, like punch a patient and still keep your job. And that was something that truly was like so incredibly hard for me to stomach. But it's just
Mm.
that the job itself is so hard,
Mm.
and you're dealing with people who are just adamant about pushing every single one of your buttons until you reach that breaking point.
Mm.
Um, but then you do reach the breaking point
Yeah.
despite all of your training and knowing what's right and wrong, and you still get to keep your job. I think
Yeah.
that's something that was really tough for me to stomach. But again, I can see both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
You have a job that's almost impossible to bear, and almost nobody else wants to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but then when it comes down to it, are you
Mm.
capable? I don't know.
That's tough. That's a
Yeah,
tough one.
it was extremely tough. But again, the good thing about this, at least our state, I don't know about other states, is there is this thing called progressive discipline, and you have this very wide range of, if it's your first offense, or
Probation and things like that, maybe? Okay.
exactly. So like you start off with like a 5-day suspension, and it goes all
Mhm.
the way up to removal. So that was nice that like there
Mhm.
was that scale. Um, But again, it takes a lot to get to a removal. And
Okay. I feel like students would want to know this too. What role do you have, if any, in changing a law?
not much.
Okay.
That's something like legislators do. It's something that's, again, it's a very long process. It's voted on. It goes back and forth a lot. Like it's not a simple process.
Mhm.
Judges on my level, or the Superior Court, do not change rules. They may write an opinion where they feel like a rule should be something, and you know, if they're wrong, it'll get appealed. It'll get appealed above that, and there's just like this
Whole process, right?
level of exactly
Yeah.
of decision making. So there isn't much changing of the law, but there is interpreting of the law, which I think is equally
Very
important.
powerful.
Exactly.
And have you ever regretted a decision? I mean, I guess not as a judge, but as an attorney?
I can't say that I regretted it. I have looked back and thought, I wish I had talked to my client to change their mind, or, settle a case rather than taking it to trial because we had better chances on the settlement. Like
Mm,
things like that, little things
yeah,
like that that I wish I could have done differently. But, again,
okay,
you're at the beck and call of your client. So
right.
there's not much
That's
wiggle room there. But no big regrets.
have you ever, and this is one of my final questions, of course, unless there's anything you'd like to add. As a teacher over the years, of course, I'm in a unique situation in that I'm in a school, but year after year, although the kids change in subtle ways because, the society changes or technology changes, the newest fad changes. But other than that, I always do see patterns in the kids, in terms of little humans.
Yeah.
So, do you ever feel like in a courtroom or by dealing with the amount of clients you've dealt with over the years, do you notice a pattern in people and about people in general, or like in their behavior, ultimately what they want? Like, and I guess what I mean by that is like with my students, I'll notice regardless of their gender, regardless of their age, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of any of those things, ultimately at the end of the day, they all just want to feel like they are heard, and they all want to feel like they're considered. That's kind of a conclusion I feel like I've drawn over the years. So I was just wondering, as an attorney dealing with the amount of people you do in the context that you're dealing with them,
Mm.
if you notice any patterns like that.
I think it actually might be a human desire to want to be heard. I think
Mm,
every single one of my clients just want me to listen.
mm,
Um, they want to just spill out the entire story, show me everything they have to prove their story, even more than I would ever need
mm,
in a courtroom or be able to use. I do think that being heard is a big thing that I have found across the board, right? Lawyers
right,
want to be heard. It's essentially why they've become lawyers. Um, Clients want to be heard. They want to be able to share their story, and
right.
judges naturally want to be heard to deter the exact reason why you're sitting in their courtroom. I think another pattern that I found is that people don't know the system, right? They don't know
Mm,
laws and regulations. They don't know what to do in a courtroom. They don't know unless they're being told, right? So
mhm,
there's this almost like an innate trust in your attorney to
mhm,
do the right thing. And I think that that's what I've found to be a pattern in for clients, right? Whether it be my client or the other client, but there's this there's this almost automatic trust that they have in you, and it almost is. I don't want to say it's a burden, but it's almost like you've taken on this responsibility,
mm,
and you want to do them well because they
yeah,
do trust you so much, and it's
yeah,
that like fear and that almost like inability to really understand your job
yeah,
that that makes them trust you so much. But I think that might actually be in every profession, right? Like like
Mm,
even with students, right? They just have this like innate trust in their teacher, right?
yeah,
Like she knows what she's talking about. She's my
yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
Same thing with doctors, right? Like, I mean, I sure hope that my doctor knows much more than I do at this point.
Yeah.
But it's just that like that sense of I don't that I think that's what it is. It's that trust that they have in you that almost makes you want to then be
They're
able to
dependent on you in a very vulnerable way,
exactly
at a very vulnerable time, and that definitely adds pressure, whether positive or not, to you, and
right.
that's huge. That kind of gives you the weight of the importance of your job.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly.
You did an awesome job. I really appreciate you doing this.
Of course, it was honestly my pleasure. I'm so glad to just see your face.
I know.